Welcome back to my channel and this series of mystical minutes where I'm going to talk about all things mystical and magical that make life so interesting. They teach us about ourselves, each other, the world around us, and add layers to this human experience on Earth. So, this episode is going to be about telepathy. I'm going to give you 15 examples from my personal life. And at the end, I will tell you how I think it is done so you can do it too if you aren't already. First of all, I'm going to share with you a definition I found on Wikipedia that says telepathy is the sympathetic affection of one mind by the thoughts, feelings, or emotions of another at a distance without communicating through the ordinary channels of sensation. So that's kind of the definition we'll go by. Also, especially for this occasion, I have put on a sweater with a dolphin on it. I'm going to show it to you. I'll move the microphone real quick. See, there's a dolphin and there's one underneath. Dolphins are known for their extraordinary capabilities of communicating through sonar, but they're suspected to also use telepathy. So I thought it was appropriate. And dolphins are fun, right? Playful. So let's play. First of all, a couple of very simple examples I think should also be considered telepathic. And I think most of us do this daily. One example is you think of someone and then the person calls you, or the other way around. You call someone and the other person says, "Oh, I was just thinking of you. How did you know to call me in this moment?" And we don't really know, right? Sometimes you have the same thought at the same time. Sometimes you see the other person like in a mental image. And you think, "Oh, I really want to call that person. So who's calling who? Who's contacting who?" So that's one of the examples. Another one is finishing each other's sentences. Is that because you're so predictable or because you're just really attuned? Another one is when you're entering a room, you're feeling the energy. And if something just happened you don't know about, you can still feel it. You feel the tension in the room. So that should also be telepathy because it's the sympathetic affection of your mind by the feelings or emotions in that room without the normal means of communication. That is someone telling you or showing you what they feel. Another example is when somehow you feel someone staring at you and you're not even looking their way. So you don't even see them from the corner of your eye, but you feel someone's looking, you turn around and they're there. I think we've all experienced that at some time. My cats do that too. I turn around and I see a cat staring at me. The what? Right? To some people, the thought of telepathy is scary. And I've been told, like, "Oh, please don't read my mind. I'm scared if you break into my head and kind of steal my thoughts or listen in on my every thought." I don't think it's possible to do it that way. At least I can't. I can't do it that way. And maybe what is more scary is the level of psychology that goes on in areas of commercials in politics, the way that is used. That's not telepathy, but observation and psychology is a real big part of being perceptive to thoughts and feelings of another mind. Let us first jump to the 15 examples I have. The first two happened in my childhood. Two examples I remember to this day in all details. So number 15 is when I was about 8 years old. In the park where we used to walk, there was this tree. It was an old willow tree. It wasn't very high, but it was very wide. And the way it branched out was at about the height of my head at that time, or maybe a little bit higher. And it formed kind of like a nest I could climb into. And I called this tree my witch tree. So I could easily climb in and I would just sit there or lie into that nest and I would stay for many minutes and just feel connected to that tree, feeling like cradled by it. I really loved that tree. So each time I went to that park, I would visit that tree. I would run up to the tree and climb in. Then one night, I had a dream. And in that dream, I was in the tree with like the Ark of Noah with all animals from the entire world in it. And I even in my dream I was wondering how is this possible because there was a bear, a giraffe, a dog, a cat, all animals were present, one of them, but they were all there, a snake. And they told me that they were sad and I asked them why they were so sad. And they told me it's because this tree is going to die. And then I felt sad. And I woke up and told my mother, and she said, "Oh, it was just a dream, just a dream." Later that day, we went to the park and I ran up to the tree to find it cut down. It was just a stump. And my mom told me, "Oh, that means nothing because willows are often cut down and they grow back." That's true. But I knew this one wouldn't grow back. So I told my mom, "No, it's dead. It will die now." Because I was told in my dream, the tree visited me in my dream and told me. And it was true. It completely disintegrated. And yeah, it was dead. And it came into my dream to say goodbye. So that was telepathy with the tree. Next one is about 2 years later. I was 10 years old. Another experience I will never ever forget that taught me a lot about mind connection and communication. There was a meadow and it had one horse and a pony. And I came up to them and I wanted to feed them some of the fresh, tall grass that was outside of the gate. And I gave the big one first, and then I wanted to give the same amount of grass to the pony. But the big one was jealous and aggressive and kicked the little one. So the one stepped away, and I tried again, but this time I had two hands full of grass and stretched my arms so I could feed them at the same time. But again, the big one kicked the small one and even bit, no, in the butt. And it was sad that I couldn't feed the pony because I could see from its eyes that it really wanted to have the grass. And it went on for a couple of more times. And then I thought, oh, I got so frustrated. And I thought, I really have to think of something to help this pony so that I can feed it. And while I was thinking of this plan, we looked in each other in the eye, me and the pony. And my plan was, okay, I'm going to pull off two bunches of grass. I'm going to give it all at once to the big one and then run along the fence far enough for the little pony to have time to eat his portion. And so I did. And the interesting thing is, we looked each other in the eye, me and the pony. I gave the grass to the horse, and we started running at exact the same time in the same direction. And it did go as I planned in my head. I fed it to the pony. By the time the big horse realized what was going on, it came after the little one and it kicked and bit and chased him back into the meadow. And it stood there looking triumphant and smiling. If you ever seen a pony smile, it was so beautiful. So we were just standing there smiling at each other. We did it, and it felt so great. And I realized in that moment that pony knew my plan because we were so focused on finding a solution together that it actually knew what I was planning to do. So now I was studying at the conservatory. I was studying recorder, all music, and I had a very good friend, and we spent a lot of time together. And we really felt connected at that time. We had some kind of choir project, and we were sitting in the break on the stairs in the hallway. And one of our classmates was sitting in between us. We were talking about music. And at one point, my friend, she lifted up her head and looked directly at me. And before she could ask her question, I said, "Yes, that's okay. Let's do that." And she replied, a little flustered, of course, "Oh, okay, okay." And the boy sitting in between us said, "What just happened? Did you just have a conversation without words? What is going on?" And then I told him, "Oh, yeah, she just asked me in her mind, would you like to come to my house tonight and I will cook for you?" And I said, "Yes." And I looked at my friend and I said, "That's what you were asking, right?" And she said, "Yes, yes, I did." And we were all kind of surprised, but at the same time, it was, yeah, it just happened. There was no explanation, but there it was. And there was also no context that I could have taken that idea from, because we weren't talking about anything but music. So, yeah. Then later in my work as a music therapist, I had a client that when he was still quite a young man, he had a virus that got to his brain and that left him almost paralyzed. It was very difficult for him to speak. So he could make sounds, but he couldn't pronounce the words properly. So it was very difficult to understand what he was saying or what he was trying to express. But he had a clear mind, so he could nod yes and shake no. And he had this lady friend that knew him already for about 30 years, and I was his music therapist. And there were some sessions that she was there, or she came at the end of the session maybe, and she told me, how come you understand him so well? And I said, well, I don't know. Because he would say something to me with just some sounds and I could not make out the words at all. So based on the sounds, I had no idea. There were no gestures. And yet most of the time I knew exactly what he wanted me to do. Or when he needed help or wanted me to get a nurse to do something. How did I know? I don't know how I did it, but I would say out loud what I thought he said. And then he would nod yes. So that's how I know I was correct. But I don't know how that was possible. I still don't. Then in that same institution, there were people I was helping with music therapy who had dementia. And I would, after the session, I would walk them back to their ward. It was a closed ward. And I remember on several occasions, these were people that were not really able to speak anymore, at least not coherent. They would say some words, but in a language sense, the words didn't have any meaning, just the expression of emotions that I responded to. But I remember, like this time, we were walking like arm in arm, and I had this thought in my mind that was about me feeling insecure as a therapist. Like, am I making a difference? Am I doing a good job? Am I accomplishing anything for these people? And this person looked up at me and she said in a very clear voice, you know, we all appreciate you and love you so much here because when you help people, it's always in a truthful way. You never pretend. You are 100% you, and you give that to us. And that's why we love you so much. And I was completely surprised by this. And I told her, thank you. And she looked down again and we shuffled on. And her ability to speak was gone again, like it was before. So, what happened there? Did someone else speak through her? Or did she somehow pick up on my thought? And because of the importance of it, she was able to verbalize all of that? How is that even possible? Like, I really don't know, but it's something obviously that I will never forget. Around that same time, I had another client. She was an elderly lady. She didn't have any family, no children, no friends. So she was feeling a bit lonely. And we were having duo therapy. So I found another lady and we were doing the therapy together. And their favorite song was You Are My Sunshine. So we were kind of having an elderly lady band and singing and playing that song, You Are My Sunshine. We were recording it and having fun. And I remember one day when I was going home by train, had to go by train. And I was so tired at the end of the day, and there were no seats. It was very, very busy, everyone going home around that time after work. So I was standing in the train and I was kind of nodding off, almost falling asleep. And in that state, suddenly I saw her face and I heard that song. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. And I thought of her and I looked at my watch. And the next day I checked and she died at exactly that moment. It was recorded in the records. And I know she said goodbye to me. And I felt really moved by that. Not really sad, but it was so special to have that connection with her. Yeah, that has always made my work very precious to me. I have another example that I experienced with a client, and that maybe is my most perfect example of telepathy. It was a client with Huntington's disease. And so she was almost paralyzed and she couldn't speak. And she had a speaking computer, and her hand with a lot of difficulty could type in the letters like this, one letter. And then she had to really focus and concentrate, and then she could do another letter. We were going to create lyrics together to make a song, to write a song together. And she was going to give me the lyrics. And I think she was about 3 letters in, and I had the complete sentence in my mind. And that was, every Saturday, my mother comes to visit me, and we go out to get an ice cream. I just, I had the chills, and I knew she was going to say that, and I almost said it out loud. But then I saw her face locked in this joy of being able to express what she wanted to tell me, and that she was doing it herself, putting the effort letter by letter. And I think it took her almost an entire hour to get to the end of the sentence. And it was word for word exactly what I got after 3 letters only. I didn't know about her mom. I had no idea that she came every Saturday or what they did together. I had no idea. So, how could that just pop into my mind from hers? That is that is telepathy, right? I have no other explanation for that. Another beautiful experience I have around death. I had a pet rat. I had a whole group of them. I think around that time it was 5 or 7. I thought 9. Anyway, his name was Sundance, and he was kind of a yellow, light orange colored rat. And I loved him so much. We had such a deep connection. I saw him on a picture when he was just a young rat. He was in Belgium. I took a train to Belgium to get him, to adopt him. Imagine that. So, and we had this connection that when I spoke his name, his eyes would pop. That's what rats do. They crunch their jaws when they feel really happy. They make this sound like cats do when they purr. And because of the muscles are behind the eyes, they kind of pop out. It's very cute. And he used to do that when he heard me speak his name. Then came a time where he had an ear infection that is very common with rats. And because it's so close to the brain, his brain got infected. And he was clearly dying. I called the vet, but she said, no, it's too late. I cannot do anything for him. And it was in the evening, late in the evening. He was so scared that in his cage, he was making all these weird jumps, like trying to get away, fighting, running away from the experience. So I took him out and I took him in my bed. And he kept on jumping really high. And then suddenly he rushed like under my pillow. Only the tail stuck out. And my head was on the pillow. And so he was very close to my head. And I felt so sorry for him in this process of dying. And I told him, I don't remember if I said it out loud or just in my mind, but I told him, if I could make it any easier on you, I would, because I love you that much. And I cannot come with you all the way into death, but I can bring you to to the gate. I can come with you until that moment where you cross over. And after I told him that, a few minutes later, something really weird happened. It was like lightning through my spine from the bottom out through my head, like an electric flash. and it made my back stretch that way, like hollow. But at the same time, I felt and saw my rat under the pillow have the same. It just completely, like, if the body was like this, then suddenly it stretched all the way. And then 1 second later, he was gone. And I realized I just experienced with him that moment where he crossed over. And that was, in a way, hard, but also really privileged to be able to have that experience with him. And I hope it supported him in some way, that he didn't feel so alone and frightened. Then another example I have was when I was 18 and I was playing in the shopping mall. I was playing my recorder and people could give me, some coins. And I was playing this music and suddenly I felt this very unpleasant physical sensation of being touched in places I did not want to be touched. And I looked up from my music and I searched, like, where is he coming from? And there was a man. And as soon as I stopped playing, he came up to me and talked to me. And after a while, I knew it was him having those thoughts about me that I felt physically before he even expressed them in words. That's kind of like when someone is watching you, but this went deeper because I could really feel it physically. So, yeah, that was very uncomfortable. Then there's another one. I knew this really wonderful Buddhist spiritual teacher, a Buddhist master, and I was sitting in front of her. We were having an interview, and she asked me, "What is your question?" I didn't speak. I just looked at her, and in my mind, I said, "I would very much like to see you as you truly are." I just asked with my mind without opening my mouth. She looked at me like, and then she said, "Ah, okay." And then we were both silent, and I saw this beautiful light all around her. It filled the room, and it was both clear and white and filled with rainbow. There's no other way I can express it. And it's the most beautiful light I have ever seen. And then it became less intensive. And I said, "Thank you." And that was our whole conversation. That was really special. And I've had other instances where I was in a room of at least 100 people in the middle of all these people. And she was there, and I was thinking of her in a very intense way. And suddenly she looked up at me and just waved at me. So I felt kind of caught and I waved back. And another moment where she asked me to do some visualization. And I was having this thinking difficulty, like, oh, when I get to this point, then what do I do? And I was about to ask when I thought, oh, I'll just find out. I'll do the visualization and I will find my way through it when I get there. And I didn't say anything, but she looked up and said, very good. For examples like this, it happened a lot. Then more recently, I had, well, actually a few occasions where I had a very intensive dream. And I woke up from that dream, and one of my children would come up still in their sleep, in their dream, and they would mumble something to me about the dream they were having. And it would be about the thing I had seen in my dream. So we were having the same dream experience, and they would just drop down beside me and sleep on, never really waking up. But somehow, in that dream connection, they came to me. In the morning, they didn't remember. Yeah, that happened several times with two different children. So we were having telepathy within the dream, apparently. Talking about children, when I was pregnant with my second child, I think it was the fifth or the sixth month. And, the baby usually moves around by the time you can feel it with your hand. And it's kind of funny and cute. And it was in the evening. And at one point, I realized I hadn't felt him in like 2 hours. And suddenly I got very worried. I thought, oh no, maybe something's wrong. Maybe he died. And I really felt so scared in that moment when suddenly, right in front of my face, like here, I saw this tiny, skinny baby boy head look at me like, Mom, what's going on? And like really worried he didn't understand why I was so scared. And I said, oh, you're okay. I'm so happy. Thank you. Go back to sleep then. And I remember when he was born, he looked exactly like that picture I saw in front of me, almost like I had a picture from him long before he was born. And I've many of those instances with my kids that I saw them long before, like when I was pregnant with my first child, my daughter, when I was wondering if I was pregnant or not. It was before I could take the test, even. Suddenly, I saw a girl about 5 years old standing on a field of grass with her hair in the wind and looking at me. And I knew I was pregnant then. And a couple of years later, we had moved to a different place. And behind our garden was this field. And it was exactly like the vision I had when I was just a couple of days pregnant. She was standing there with her hair in the wind and was exactly the same. That's another pregnancy example. Then I had a very mystical experience. I think was a couple of weeks or months ago, so very recently. And I don't know if this counts as telepathy, but I'm going to put it in and, well, you can judge for yourself. I suddenly saw myself in a vision sitting at the window of the house I was living in then at about 10 years of age. And the interesting thing is, I remember that moment looking out of that window and exactly how I felt, and how I felt there was some kind of presence there that I felt connected to. And at the same time, I felt very lonely, like I was missing having connections like that. And so I was staring out the window. It was dark, it was the window of my bedroom. But now I looked at myself from the outside of the window. And even though I experienced what I felt then, at the same time, I felt myself the way I am now. And I looked at that little girl, me, and I told myself, don't worry about it. You will be very fine. And the interesting thing is that everything happened in the same moment. So the memory I had, the feeling I had now, but this past me that felt their presence, that is the me now, everything was kind of mixed up. And so I was communicating with myself. That was a really powerful sensation. Then another experience I have that took place at a window, and this may be even more weird in a way. I woke up in the middle of the night to a very strange bluish white light. It woke me up. So I sat up and I sleep under this inclined window in the attic. And I looked out of the window into the night sky, and outside of it, in the sky, were aliens that appeared to be crystal like, shiny, bright, like crystal glass, white like, but not solid, but also not gas, or it's hard to explain. They were just light. And I looked at them and they created this geometrical light pattern. And I remember I responded, well, that's really beautiful, but what does it mean? I said that in my mind, not out loud. And their response was in my language, in my mind. Well, I think it was in English. I'm sure, yes, it was in English. They said, hello from your mother, your father, your mother, your sister, and your brother. And I said, hello and thank you. And the moment when I said that in my mind, I saw a flower of light appear in the sky. So it translated to their language. So that's my experience of telepathy with beings that are not human and not from this earth. And I went back to sleep after that. Then my final example from my personal life, I was at a festival and I was doing a workshop in plant communication because plant intelligence is fascinating. The plant consciousness. I will do another video about that sometimes. We were sitting around a tree with about 12 people who had never done this plant communication before. So I took them through the steps, how to connect to the tree. And we was sitting there for many minutes in a kind of connected meditation to the tree. And then afterwards, I asked them one by one what they had experienced, what message the tree gave them. And each one of them repeated the same message, but slightly tailored to their personal situation. And I remember people were impressed, touched, in tears, because no one could deny what had just happened there. The tree had communicated with each one of us its special message. And I have one short example that is not mine, but happened in my life, namely my grandfather, my aunt, so his daughter, had a present for him, like a little surprise, but she didn't tell him what it was. And he was so curious. He couldn't let it go. So he kept kind of guessing, and she didn't want to tell him. She didn't tell him anything, no clues, no details, nothing. And then at some point, he said, I keep seeing this bright light with green around it. I don't know what it means, but I keep seeing this. Then finally, when my aunt gave him the little gift, it was a picture of her in the forest in an open space with a lot of light. And she was sitting in this open light, circular space among the trees. And that was what he saw. So I believe he picked that from her mind because she was thinking of it in conversations with him, enjoying the fact that she could have him this curious, no, this anticipation. And he picked it up. Yeah, I remember that. Now, so how is it done? And in my experience and opinion, it's a combination of different things. One important thing is micro body language, tiny facial shifts, muscle tensions. So when you get very good at observing those tiny shifts, then you get a lot better at understanding what someone else is going through. And also, when you know your own body really well, then you'll have those mirror neurons kick in. And if you observe on this level and connect on this level, you get to this point where you experience the same thing at the same time. So it seems like you're reading someone's mind, but you're actually of the same vibration and having the exact same experience because, in a way, you are the same in that moment. Then the connection is really important to really connect to someone, to be able to open completely, to tune in. And there's something like the purpose and intensity of what is being communicated. The more focused the sender is in expressing that message or thinking of that message, easier it is to receive it. But you have to be open to receive it as well. You have to know yourself so well and feel so secure within yourself that you're able to embody that experience with someone else without experiencing the fear of losing who you are. And I think the final component, at least for me, is love, because I've always loved all my clients. That's just the way I work. I cannot not love someone I'm working with. It's a very pure, intimate feeling to be allowed in someone's deepest feelings, sensations, emotions. I feel really lucky that people are willing to open up and trust me in that way. And I want to be there for them completely in that moment. And when I do, this kind of magic happens, but it's never a trick I can just do whenever I decide. Let's read someone's mind, for example. Let's say I'm not really interested in reading minds as much as understanding where people truly come from. So, not what thought are they having about me, but what is the wounded part, for example, in them that makes them have that thought? And how can I connect to that and help them with it if they allow it? Because it always has to be with permission. Yeah, so I'm really curious what you think of my real life examples. And if you have any to add, please write them down. That would be fun because I think we all have this ability. It's a natural ability to communicate this way. And the more we feel secure within ourselves, the more we are able to open up to those around us and have that natural flow. That's all for now. Thank you for listening and hope to see you again soon.